Okay, I just hit the live button and I didn't even know that I was live. All right, so friends, today I want to talk about all of these misconceptions in terms of generating interview opportunities. This was inspired by one of my coaching sessions where my clients were talking to me about how they're looking for jobs and the advice that is out there. I'm going to be giving you the step by step in terms of how to generate executive level opportunities. The number one complaint that I get from people is that I apply, I get crickets, nothing happens, and it's tough because if you are in a bad situation, either you're not happy with your role, or maybe you've been laid off and you're frustrated, you're not getting interviews, you don't understand why. I am going to give you my perspective as someone who has helped over 1,000 professionals, from senior individual contributors with more than 10 years of experience to director level professionals to VP level professionals. Look, the strategy to generate interviews at a senior level in this competitive market are not the same as strategies that you might have used in the past when you were a mid level professional. That doesn't work. And especially in this market, the approach needs to be completely different. Okay? It actually needs to be quite entrepreneurial. So let me break it down for you so that it's very easy to follow. I encourage you to listen all the way till the end because I'm going to be dropping a lot of gold. Okay, so first things first. The first thing that I wanted to say is I have had clients who had trouble applying for jobs because they didn't know what they wanted, or they didn't know how their experience translated to the market out there. There's an old-fashioned way of how people look for jobs, and how they look for jobs is by title. And when you are an executive with a variety of experience, it's very difficult to put yourself in a box. And the box that you were in your previous organization does not accurately reflect your potential. And that is a problem. The way you're branding yourself, the way you're talking about your value is based on that box, which is inaccurate. And it is why you're not getting the opportunities that you want. Okay? So that's number one. And so think about it from a marketing perspective. How do businesses generate leads? How do businesses acquire customers? They need to be great at explaining their value and what makes them different. And that is what we call positioning. What is your position in the market? Are you considered a high value professional? Are you considered a low tier professional? If you position yourself, or if you position yourself in a way that accurately reflects that you are a high tier professional, then you're obviously going to be the number one choice. You are going to not have to convince too much and twist anyone else's, arm. And you are going to get the opportunities knocking on your door. Now, I was having a conversation with one of my clients today who has been struggling a little bit in terms of figuring out what his sweet spot is and what he wants. So, a lot of you might feel like there aren't a lot of jobs out there, but that's not because there aren't a lot of jobs. It's because you don't know how to identify the right roles and search for them. That's the number one thing that you are struggling with, is figuring out where those jobs are. Now, a big mistake that people make when it comes to figuring out what role they fit into is they search on title, and you should not be doing that because companies do not uniformly use the same titles, especially at the executive level, to describe where you fit in. And by searching on title, you're kind of limiting yourself, you're putting yourself in a box. Okay. So I have a client, and we did this exercise where he did my career archetype assessment. And my career archetype assessment, the purpose of it is to help my clients understand their value, their positioning, and what differentiates them, their strengths, all of that good stuff. So after that exercise, he became very clear in terms of what is it that he's good at. And there were two things that he identified. It's actually that he is great at helping organizations expand into new markets, and he's great at building international relationships. Okay? So, guess what I advised him? Is to actually search on those things versus search on the title. And that makes things a lot easier. Now, you may not be able to figure out what your value proposition is and what your skills are. And that is a normal thing. And this is why it's important to work with someone who's going to look at all of your nonlinear experience, your messy, executive experience, the different hats that you wore, in order to help you boil it down to two explicit skills. So actually, let me show you guys something, because I came up with this concept that's going to make you guys really understand why is it that you struggle so much with expressing your value. So I came up with this basically I came up with this diagram. It's called the Value Awareness Pyramid. And the Value Awareness Pyramid practically helps you understand why is it that you have so much trouble with expressing your value. Here's why. The problem is that most of you do not have a high level awareness of your value. You think that you know what you're good at. You think that you understand your value, but you actually don't. Because most of you, the average person only knows how to describe their value based on the activities that they perform on the job. I call it the act of doing. So you might be good at saying something like, I'm a great facilitator. I'm great at building relationships with executives, because these are activities that you perform on the job, and the way you express your value is based on these activities. However, you're not doing yourself a lot of justice when you do that, because there's a lot more to that. The next level of awareness is what I call being aware of your explicit and implicit skills. So ask yourself, okay, so, I'm a product manager, for example, or I'm a product leader. I build these roadmaps, or I prioritize these roadmaps. Well, what is the explicit skill that is tied to that? Maybe the skill is that, I don't know, you are a great negotiator. You are a great communicator. You're really good at aligning, teams, right? That's the explicit skill. Now, this is where most professionals describe themselves, but where they struggle with is saying, I can apply this to any context, any industry. And this skill helps me get the business to achieve a particular outcome that is strategic and important, right? When you're able to communicate at that highest level of the awareness pyramid, that is when you're able to create more options for you. That is where you make yourself more valuable. Because at the end of the day, the company might think that you need specific skills in order to achieve a business outcome. And if you are not able to connect the dots for them and help them see that these skills that you bring to the table are important, they're going to help them solve problems. They will help them, achieve a particular outcome that is important to them. If you don't connect those dots, then it's going to make it very difficult for companies to evaluate your value. Okay? So that is usually the disconnect. And this is why people struggle with figuring out what makes them different, with their positioning, all of that good stuff. So I sit down with all of my clients and help them boil it down to a value that is transferable to a specific industry organization. Okay, so I hope you guys understand now why positioning is important. It's a lot more than titles. It's a lot more than, just talking about your skills. It's more about being able to connect your skill to any context and to connect it to a business outcome and a strategic why. Okay, now let's talk about the job search and why people have trouble with the job search. So, like I said, it's partly because you don't know how to call or how to translate what you do to a particular basically role, right? You're hung up on the titles that your past organization gave you. And then the big thing is you talk too much to ChatGPT and Claude. I had this conversation with my clients today. Spending too much time with ChatGPT and Claude and letting it sway you. Here's the thing. It's very convenient to use Claude and ChatGPT. They are free, but they can take you down a dangerous rabbit hole, and you end up misrepresenting yourself. You end up basically putting yourself in the wrong box, and you end up watering down your brand so generic and it sounds like everyone else. Look, I use ChatGPT and Claude too, and I have gone down that very wrong path in several occasions in my life. One of them was health related, where I was convinced that I broke my foot because I uploaded photos of my foot. I explained to ChatGPT like the pain and all of this stuff. And then what ended up happening was ChatGPT kept telling me that I had a stress fracture. And it turned out that I didn't. I had a cyst in my foot that got taken care of very quickly once we figured out that it was a cyst. My doctor did an MRI. We figured out it was a cyst, and within a week, it was drained. I was back to normal. Whereas before, I thought it was a stress fracture. I wasn't like putting weight on my foot for a whole month thinking it was a stress fracture. So that's just how ChatGPT can mislead you and take you on a path because A, you might be giving it the wrong inputs. You might be sort of creating bias. Like I was telling ChatGPT, oh, it might be a stress fracture. It hurts a lot. I've had a fracture before. And it's the same thing with your job search. ChatGPT can sway you and tell you, no, you should not be applying to those jobs. No, you don't fit into those categories. And you start believing it because it validates you. It sort of like takes your fears and 10x's them. And then it puts you on this wrong path. And what you need to do is you need to talk to a professional because here's the thing, you guys. ChatGPT, like, where is it getting that information? It's getting it from like general public information that is not necessarily research backed. It's taking a lot of hearsay, things that people say on LinkedIn who may not be qualified to give you advice, and it just aggregates it and gives it to you. Notice how ChatGPT doesn't even tell you where it's coming up with this information, right? So that is the problem. That is the problem. Now, some of the things that I teach my clients when they're looking for jobs is that they need to be good at building relationships. The advice that works for mid-level people is just apply or do a lot of outreach. That does not work for executives. You need to be really good at building relationships and expanding your network as well as nurturing your existing network. And this is how I teach my clients how to do this. Pay attention because this is very important. The number one mistake that people make is they confuse networking with being salesy. So, networking is twofolds. It's going through your existing network and trying to strengthen the relationship so that the person actually wants to help you and advocate for you. There are people in your network right now who would advocate for you. They would go out of their way and advocate for you. These people might be in a high profile position or they might be in your domain, which might make it easy for you. The thing is, if you have those types of people, the issue is that they're not going to know every single person on earth, and therefore they may not be able to connect you with opportunities all the time because there's going to be a limited number of opportunities that they may know about, right? And so whether you know someone or not, people tell me, oh, I don't have a network. You know what? Even people who have 1 million people in their network, they still tell me that they don't have people in their network because the reality is who you know will not always be privy to opportunities that are currently open in the market. And so you're always going to be in a situation where you need to learn how to talk to a stranger in order to land the role that you want. So how do you talk to a stranger? How do you get that stranger who might be a decision maker and have an opportunity to actually be sold that you can do the job? Here's what you need to do. You need to be convinced 1,000% that you can do the job. I want you to think of a surgeon. A surgeon may not be experienced in every single complicated case, but a confident surgeon is willing to take on your case and give it their best shot and figure out how to help you. But if you go to a surgeon who is hesitant, who's not very confident, then you're not going to want them to touch you. And so that's the attitude that you need to have. You need to have conviction in your value. And that comes from understanding your value based on what I shared in my value pyramid. You need to be able to articulate your value at a level of high awareness where you're not just talking about what you do and the activities that you perform, you're talking about your explicit and implicit skills and how they apply to the company's context and what type of business value they create. Okay? So when you're able to show that, that becomes attractive. It's kind of like dating. If you go and date someone, if you go on a date with someone and you're so self-conscious about the way you look, the way you speak, your weight, that's going to be a turnoff to the other person. But even if you weren't the most attractive person in the universe, but you were so confident in yourself, that person is going to feel very attracted to you. So it's the same freaking thing. Your ability to convince the other person on the other side has to start from within. Once you identify what your value proposition is, then it's about how you're communicating it. But it's also about how you are approaching that person. Some of you, the way you approach decision makers is so salesy, and I don't understand it because you're executives, you have hired people in the past. But when it comes to you reaching out to people, you feel awkward, you become salesy, You make the ask from the first message. Hey, how's it going? You don't even know the person. Here's my resume. Are you hiring? That is a turnoff. And what you need to do is you need to learn how to have a conversation with someone. You need to have multiple conversations in order to build that rapport. And how you have that conversation is you start with flattery. You start with things that you have in common with the person. And then over time, I call it the pivot to pitching yourself. And that needs to be done in a very seamless, natural way. And this is something that I teach my clients. Okay? I have had clients who got interviews just through messaging someone on LinkedIn, a stranger on LinkedIn, because their approach wasn't salesy and because they already had top-notch positioning. Because here's the thing, when you send a connection request to a decision maker, what do you think is the first thing that they're going to do? They are going to view your profile. And if your profile is confusing, if your profile is scattered, if someone looks at your profile and they still don't understand what is it that you do and what is it that you bring to the table, then why would they want to talk to you? They're not going to want to talk to you. I'm going to bring it back to the same dating analogy. If you're on a dating app and you have a really crappy profile and a really crappy photo and you try to match with someone, do you think that they're going to match with you? They're not going to match with you. They're going to think that you're cringe. And so it's the same thing with your LinkedIn profile. You know what I'm talking about. If you haven't updated your photo in the last 10 years, and if you're not smiling in your photo, why would you think someone is going to accept your connection request? They don't know you. They don't know you. You need to make a great first impression. And if you send a salesy message and an in-mail instead of sending a connection request, why would they accept? Why would they want to talk to you? Imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop and someone approaches you, and the first thing that they say to you is, "Hey, do you have a job for me?" Oh my God, I would feel so used, right? But if someone comes up to you and says, what type of coffee is that you're drinking? Ooh, I love your outfit. It looks really nice. Wouldn't you want to talk to them more? Absolutely. So you need to learn how to approach strangers. I don't even want to hear anyone here telling me that, oh my God, I don't have a network. Then learn how to expand your network, because if you don't learn how to expand your network, you're going to have the same problem. And stop hiding behind your job and saying that there are no jobs and you're doomed. You need to learn how to build relationships, even if you don't need a job. It's going to help you even internally within your organization. If you learn how to build relationships within your organization, that's also going to help you move up. So it is an uncomfortable skill, but it's a necessary skill that you need to learn. And yes, I understand that when you're an executive, you're busy, you have your head down, you're trying to put out fires, but you gotta really think about your own career too, and think about the long term. Otherwise, one day your company might go through a merger and acquisition, which happens to some people, and a lot of people are in that situation, come to me when that happens. And then you're going to feel like lost because you haven't spent time building those relationships. So honestly, when I work with my clients, it's not just about job search, it's not just about landing jobs. We really work on life skills that are going to create so much value in your career and help you progress. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is the art of storytelling. Oh my goodness, I have had clients who had non-typical experience and they went through insane pivots because they nailed the art of storytelling. So one of my clients, she was in nonprofit. She was a policy leader and she wanted to pivot into tech. And she landed at Meta after working with me. And you know what helped her land that role? Apart from the entire system that I've been teaching you guys, which is identifying her positioning. She had no idea what she wanted to do, to the point where she was like, should I be a nurse? Like, I don't even know what to do with my life. So we worked on that. We worked on building her brand and her positioning. But the thing that really moved the needle is her ability to tell a story. See, the thing is, when you really, really tell a good story, again, you don't sound like an instructional manual. You are able to bring in past experiences of specific moments in your career, and you're able to package them in such a way that makes the hiring manager feel like, oh my God, this executive gets it. They understand our context, they understand our situation. We found our person because you're really able to hit it on the nail in terms of what keeps them up at night, their pain points, all of that good stuff. And you're able to share it so beautifully in such an engaging and concise way that not only it logically convinces the person that you're the right fit, but it just builds that personal connection with the other side. Because here's the thing, you're dealing with human beings. The decision makers are human beings. And I will tell you guys that 80% of the decisions we make are based on emotion. They're not based on logic. This is why people get so freaking frustrated and they say to me, I had everything on paper. I have all the skills. I check all the boxes. But maybe when you went to the interview, you weren't smiling and the person just didn't like you. And it can be as small as that. And it's the reason you got rejected. If you don't believe me, ask yourself about an experience where you had to buy something and you were so close to buying it, but then you got turned off by the salesperson because of the way they treated you. And it could have been a small little quirk that made you not want to buy the thing. I know that I go to a dental hygienist because she smiles and I love talking to her. And even though there may be another dental hygienist who's better than her, I don't even give a crap because I feel comfortable with her. So it's the same thing with you. And this is why, again, when you're going to interviews, you're complaining about not getting the interviews or you're complaining about not converting those interviews into offers, and you're thinking about all the logical things and you have these blind spots, but you need someone on the outside to help you see the big picture end to end and help you identify where you are going wrong. Okay? And that's what I do with my clients. I'll give you guys an example. One of my clients who is navigating a pivot from being an entrepreneur to being a product leader, we did this exercise. We figured out that product is exactly what he should be targeting, but he was getting rejections. And he almost burnt the whole thing down and thought, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't, pursue a product path. And after looking at the data, because I get all of my clients to create basically a Trello board and we visualize all the jobs that they're applying to. And I was able within 10 minutes to spot where he was going wrong. On his resume, he was not talking about building software products. And all the jobs that he was applying to were software and SaaS products. And I was able to spot it in like 10 minutes just by asking him questions and looking at the data. And that's the problem. You can be, when you're inside the jar, it's so difficult to read the label from the outside. Okay? So, if you are in a situation where you're not happy with your career and you know that you deserve 200,000 plus roles, So I help my clients land roles between 200,000 and 350,000. Now, there are a very small number of clients who are a little bit more junior. We target, $150,000 roles. But for the most part, the majority of my clients target $200,000 roles and above. If you are in that situation, maybe you're not, maybe you deserve 200,000, but haven't hit that number yet and you need help hitting that number. You know that you deserve it and you're qualified. Or maybe you are already making 200,000 but you want to make more, or the money is not the issue and the issue is the wrong environment, the wrong organizational structure, then this is something that I can help you with. And so the best way to see if I can help you is to book a career diagnosis with me. So I'm going to show you how to book that call. By the way, I don't always offer this call. Sometimes I get very busy and I have to block out my calendar because of the number of inquiries. And so if you are in that situation, I really encourage you to jump on this opportunity because timing is of the essence. If you are in a situation where you've been stagnant, do you really want to wait 6 more months while you're losing, more than, let's say, $5,000 a month? No, right? So I encourage you to book that call so that you don't waste time and so that you can get to your goals faster. And listen, I don't end up working with everyone that I talk to, because at the end of the day, like, we have to be aligned, we have to be a fit, right? In order for us to be able to work together. You need to be sold on my approach. The only way you're going to know is if you book the call. There's no other way. Okay? Because I'm a firm believer in having a conversation. I don't get people to read a bunch of documents. Like, how's that going to help you? We need to just have a coffee chat and figure out if we're a fit. So how you book the call is you click on this button under my heading, book an appointment. It's going to take you to this page. This page is really good for helping you understand who the heck I am and the kinds of people that I worked with. This video explains it all. I share my story of how I came to Canada when I was 18, how I built my career from like $40,000 to like $200,000 at the executive level, and how I decided to quit over text and, dedicate the rest of my career to helping professionals like you achieve their goals, because I myself was frustrated and I was in your shoes. And so I have a lot of drive to help you all to make up for the misery that I went through. So I encourage you to watch this video and then click on this button, book your career diagnosis. There's a 2-minute intake form that you need to fill out. It's going to help me understand your situation and have the context so that I can help you. And then once you go through that 2-minute intake, my calendar link is going to pop up and you can basically book a spot that suits you. All right? Okay. I would really love it if you tell me in the chat what your biggest takeaway was from this call. It would really help me so that I know what to focus on in my content. And at the very minimum, to encourage me to keep doing these lives, I would love it if you give me a like right now, because it's going to help me know who's watching. Whether you're watching this live or the replay, it really is going to give me some information to see that you guys are finding this valuable, which is going to encourage me to do more of these lives. All right. So thank you so much for listening, as usual. I try to do these lives around 8:30 p.m. Eastern every now and then. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great night. Let me know where you're tuning from, what country you're tuning from. I'm always curious to see, who from the world is listening. And yeah, happy Thursday. And tomorrow's Friday, thank God. Okay, talk soon.